It's one of the major events. It was one of the major events for us that year. And I was in charge that year of creating the social media campaign for Roche for ASCO. And it was a massive campaign. Wow. When I think back to doing this, it was weeks and weeks of pulling together a huge amount of content from a variety of different places within the company, ranging from custom pages on our corporate website, to LinkedIn pages, to videos, to interview clips with our CEO, Severin Schwan, to Twitter, interactive quizzes, you name it. There was a lot in this social media campaign. And here's just some of the examples of some of the content that was in this campaign across a number of different platforms. So here, yeah, we had like 3D plasticine animations, whiteboard animations with our head of breast cancer at the time, et cetera, et cetera. It was a massive campaign. And to be honest, it was, by my own metrics at the time, extremely impressive. The Twitter planet on its own had 212 tweets for a 5-day conference. We had over 23 million impressions. We were the second most mentioned pharma Twitter handle during the conference. We had lots of engagement with HCPs. When people got to our corporate website, they stayed on page for an average of over 2 minutes, which compared to our internal benchmark at the time was extremely impressive. And 10,000 page views of our online content. All very impressive. And I was extremely pleased at the time. What made me even more pleased was seeing the simpler stats for the ASCO15 hashtag. As mentioned, we were the second highest ranking pharma company. We were always going to lose to BMS because that was the conference they released their first cancer immunotherapy phase 3 results. That was always going to be the top news. But we were up there on the mention list, and by impressions, we were top. So more people saw our content than from anybody else during that Congress. So super happy. And this is where reality hits, can hit quite hard. Or in this case, didn't. At no point during the development of the campaign or afterwards did anyone, senior management or otherwise, call me to a meeting and ask 2 pretty basic questions. So Manu, you spent a lot of hours of your time and a lot of other people's and agency budget, etc., on this campaign. Can you explain to us how exactly did all of that drive business results? And then more than that, how did it provide value to our target audiences? Had they asked those questions then, and when I consider those questions now, I feel vaguely like this. I would not, with a straight face, be able to answer either of those questions, which is a problem, right? You can't demonstrate measurable business value, and you also can't demonstrate that your target audience actually showed significant and meaningful value beyond just liking and clicking posts. And this tongue-in-cheek image on screen right now kind of summarizes, I think, all of this quite well. Far too many pharma social campaigns, and actually I'd broaden this to just corporate social campaigns in general, but let's stick with pharma, could quite easily be condensed satirically into the following statement. my company is a leader in whatever it is that we're talking about right now. And we are committed, very committed to this particular disease that we're talking about right now, that we have a product or solution coming along for shortly. And anyway, you should listen to us because we are important. I know, were you aware that it's Random Awareness Day today? Unfortunately, in this day and age, whereas that kind of message might have worked 30 years ago, when there wasn't much choice in the channels by which people could get their news, I think we've all experienced this. You see something where a company is basically talking about themselves, and you zone out very quickly and start checking other sources of information. Even worse, you might block that company that's talking at you about them, and rather not about what they're interested in. And this is important because, well, it was always important, but it's getting even more important because there's a kind of perfect storm brewing. And my belief is, if we don't change our approach pretty soon, we're going to be in deep trouble. So what are some of the kind of things I'm talking about are on the horizon? Well, one thing that's not on the horizon, one thing that we're living through right now, is obviously that we're at the beginning of one of the deepest recessions in living memory, at least probably 100 years. If that hasn't affected you and your work and your company yet, it almost definitely will at some point, probably quite soon. So the times where there was available budget to spend playing around and generally just not being as mindful as you possibly could be with your social media, if they haven't gone already, will go away soon. Secondly, hopefully most of you watching this will already be aware that the old school model of marketing, where the broadcast model, is not dead, but it's definitely losing its preeminence in the sphere. So where you had a message, and success was basically getting that message out to as many people as possible in a fancy way, and then pushing people down some sort of funnel or buyer journey, and then ending up with customers and hopefully advocates at the end, but basically driving them through a funnel. And what the new model that's coming through, not necessarily to replace the old model, but definitely gaining in importance, is this that I've stolen with pride from the content advisory. You can go to the website and check this out from the source. But basically, where instead of broadcast, we are building and nurturing audiences. We are providing them with value, whatever form that value might take, in advance of any sort of commercial messaging or trying to sell them anything, so that we have people who know us, know our company, trust us, look to us as a source of value and information, so that when we eventually would like to leverage or monetize their audience in whatever way, and there are multiple different ways that can be done, they are there and far more likely to engage and purchase from us in the future. The third major trend is and I love that this is happening so quickly now, is the real empowerment of patients. The days where all we needed to do in pharma was to communicate with therapeutic area experts and prescribers, with sales reps and MSLs, are not gone. That will always be part of the marketing mix. But now we're moving, I think, to the inevitable state where patients will become the true driving force behind medical and prescribing decisions. So they need, patients will be involved at all stages of pharmaceutical development. They will be involved in, they should be involved in all of the marketing activities. They were patient groups as well. And ultimately they will decide what they receive, and not doctors. What does that mean? Well, it means we need to get really good at engaging with patients on social, which is not a skill that we necessarily have in this industry very much. So we need to get away from that kind of physician focus with data, very rational communications, and to something more balanced, more recognizing the emotional state that would resonate with that different audience. Okay, so I've gone through an example of a campaign which was just throwing content at the wall and hoping some of it stuck at ASCO, and then also quickly gone through why it's important that we don't do that anymore. So then let's finish this presentation on how do you actually bring value to social in pharma, and that's obviously a massive topic. But in the time I've got available, I'll take you through the very core considerations that you need to look at for any communication campaign, social or not. And this isn't only about social media. It's not even about communications, actually. This is marketing 101. To create a truly successful campaign where you have a chance of being able to successfully engage with a target audience, you need the following things. You need to set meaningful objectives and measurable KPIs that are aligned with tangible business objectives. You need to select and know your audience more than you ever did before. You need to develop valuable content on an ongoing long-term basis. You need to be on the right channels. And here I'm the social media guy saying, well, maybe that doesn't include social media channels, right? Just because it's easy to get on social doesn't necessarily mean you should be on social. And then finally, the bit that always gets missed because it's difficult, analyzing and optimizing over and over again, right? So rather than having one-off campaigns that you just run, see what happened, and then that's it, there's no real learning or no carry through to another campaign, having ongoing or sequential campaigns that you can analyze the results of, see what worked, what didn't, and then feed those into the next round of the campaign. So these are all pretty basic, and I don't apologize for that. In the rush to get onto Facebook or do some really cool tweets or do some paid ads, it's what I've noticed in consulting with multiple colleagues over many years is the major way that we aren't as successful as we'd like is we lose sight of these basics. So let me go through some examples or a little more detail on the first three of these in this presentation. Setting meaningful objectives and KPIs. So there's a lot on this slide. So let's go through it. The objective of any campaign should be to take a defined audience, and we'll get into audience in a little bit, a very specific, granularly defined audience from their current situation, and by that I mean their perception of a certain topic or product or message, through to your desired situation. And that desired situation should, and probably, must align with a defined business goal. So when we're creating a social media campaign, it shouldn't just be developed in isolation, right? Let's just get 1 million views on Facebook. Let's get this video watched. Let's drive some traffic to this, to our corporate website, and that's it. Let's just drive people. That desired situation should align with a business goal. So increase in sales, possibly almost always problematic for a farmer to have that specific objective, but something along those lines, like a defined increase in awareness of among a certain audience of a certain topic, an increase in a number of calls to our medical information line about a certain topic. Things like this, that you could go to a commercial director and explain what you're doing, and he or she would instantly know what you're doing and how it would support his brand or his franchise. So before you start any social media campaigns, what's the current situation and what's the desired situation? And the way to ideally assess this is with 4 criteria. So starting at the easy end, there's awareness. So is this audience aware of my company, my product, my disease awareness campaign, or the disease itself? Are they aware of information about the disease? Next up on the scale is knowledge. So they might be aware of it, but do they actually know about the topic? If they know about the topic, then what about their belief about that topic? Do they believe that your company is sustainable, that it's aligned with the audiences, with my values as an audience? Do I believe that their product could help me? And then the last criterion, the hardest to do something about, but the one that obviously yields the most relevant and useful return, is behavior change. So I believe that something, and I'm going to act on it. I'm going to do something about this actively. Now, when you're looking at the current desired situation, you need to be ideally as far along this arrow as you possibly can, based on your objective and your resources, and what is achievable at this time. A problem that I see over and over again is people stop with awareness. Like, social media campaigns are always, almost always about driving people to a web page. It's about clicks and views on social media posts. Easy to do, doesn't really provide any real meaningful value to the business. When you're looking at this, you always have to think about the barriers and the opportunities that you have. Barriers that you have to overcome and opportunities you can leverage. So this really requires you to sit and think, right, if I need to get this audience from not being aware of my company or my product at all to believing that my company is great, and they're actually going to go out and sign up to my newsletter or download a resource, what are the barriers in the way of that happening? Am I super clear what those barriers are and how can I overcome them? And on the other hand, what opportunities are there with this audience that I can leverage? I know that this audience are really keen on this, or already believe in that I could leverage in my campaign. And then finally, your KPIs then need to be as defined as possible, and also align with these 4 criteria. So if you end up with an awareness objective, okay, so then it is, your KPIs would be along the lines of views of social media posts, web pages, new followers gained, etc., etc. Knowledge, if it's a knowledge objective, then you could start having KPIs like visits, time on page of an educational asset, responses to polls and surveys, etc. When you get to belief, you could say, well, my KPIs would be shares of or positive comments on digital content, preferably by pre-identified digital experts, the online influencers. And then behavior is the best one, because that's where you can truly measure a meaningful and useful change. So that's things like, for example, registrations to or views of webinars, signups to newsletters, signing up petitions, and downloading how-to documents or questions to ask your doctor. sheets, things like this. So hopefully that gives you an idea of what a meaningful objective in KPI is. Another thing, hopefully, that this will spark some ideas with you. We're all aware of the funnel, right? The marketing funnel, the basic concept. I know that this is, many of you would go, well, this is outdated and obsolete now, but just for the purpose of this section, just let's go with it. That you want to take, there's a journey for your audience and ultimately your buyer, where they go from being unaware of you, your product, or anything, or that they have a problem, through to being aware, being interested in what you have to offer, considering seriously about your offer, showing some intent, and then having the conversion at the end. Where social media campaigns often fail, or not fail, but aren't as successful at showing value as they could be, is they don't consider any sort of customer audience journey. What do I mean by that? Well, here's just a made-up example, just to illustrate what I'm talking about. So consider that you have a stakeholder, a member of your audience, and they see one of your paid social ads on whatever topic. And they go, oh, that's interesting. And then they go and do a Google search on that topic. When they go to Google and do the search, one of the promoted posts at the top is from you, and that points to a video on your YouTube channel on that topic. So they go, okay, that's interesting. So I'll click on that. I'll go to this YouTube video. The YouTube video is brilliant. It gives a really good overview of the basic topic. And then within the article, well, within the video, and then also in the description, there is a link to an article on your corporate website, which really gets into what you can do about this topic. So then the person goes, oh, okay. So they click through to the corporate website, and makes at the bottom of all of that information about what they can do about this particular topic, there is a one-page questions to ask you doctor download. Now, you're probably going to download that in one of two scenarios. One is you're from a competitor company and you're just doing some competitive intelligence. But otherwise, it's reasonably likely that someone downloading that would be thinking about going to their doctor to ask about this their issue, and therefore, this is a valuable resource for them. So they download the document. They might be from the original social ad retargeted later with a second paid social ad, just to remind them about the topic and that they should do something about it. And then ultimately, they go to their doctor. They have a conversation based around the questions to ask you doctor document, and there's a change in the treatment approach. So a customer journey has happened here. And our hypothetical social media campaign interacted with that ultimate customer at a number of points along that journey. It was mindful. It was by design that there would be top of funnel, mid funnel, bottom of funnel content that was coming in at various points that ultimately led to someone having a business relevant conversion at the end. Now, we can't, in this instance, you couldn't measure the conversation directly. So the KPI wouldn't be around the conversion. However, you can obviously measure how many people downloaded the questions to ask you doctor document, which shows significant intent. So that would be, for me, the KPI, the top KPI of this whole campaign would be downloads of this document, because it's as near to the conversion point as we can usefully get. It's completely measurable, and it's you can make the case that a significant number of those downloads would result in a conversation with the doctor, which is ultimately what we want to happen. So, takeaway, social media campaigns. Yes, it's great to have campaigns that just drive people to a landing page or a website or a specific asset. I'm not saying that's wrong, but have you thought about how that could then lead to a further a future point on the customer journey? How could you link up various things to end up with a meaningful and measurable conversion at the end? The next key point is, and I'm always saying this, the audience is never the general public, never. Why do I say that? Well, let's say you're on a soapbox in the middle of London, and this is the scene in front of you. Well, it wouldn't be right now, but imagine this is the scene in front of you. Would there be one message that you could shout out on your megaphone that would be of interest, relevance, and use to everybody on this picture? And the obvious answer is that would be highly, highly, highly unlikely. More likely would be that of the hundreds of people on this, on this picture, there might be only a handful, or maybe even just one person who would be interested in your message, would find it relevant, and actually would be in a position to do anything about it that would be useful for your business. It might be just one person. So whenever you think, okay, I need to go out and talk to the general public, you're doing yourself a massive, massive disservice. You're wasting money. You're then sending in money, it's going to spend a lot of money targeting a lot of irrelevant people. You'll get lots of views and possibly some clicks and likes that will be very nice for your ego, but ultimately it's going to result in a very suboptimal, not cost-effective campaign. Who are those very specific people who actually want to hear your message, or could be interested in hearing your message and be in a position to do something useful for you? One way to get some focus on this is to develop audience or buyer personas. This is just an example I found on the internet, so just that was one that's freely available. I'm not saying that you need to do this level of detail for every audience, for every campaign, not at all. But this is just to illustrate the kind of thinking, the kind of approach that you need if you're going to start targeting audiences more effectively. And that's to really define a granular audience, a group of groups of people who you could reasonably say share a lot of the same needs and wants and desires and pain points that you can then personify. So, just like, oh, this is Diane, director of critical care at a hospital. And she is fictional and represents a group of people that you could then start trying to target with your social media campaigns. So everything from basic demographics to values and goals, things they need, problem points, what they kind of do in their day-to-day job, where they get their information, what do they like to do, what the objections they typically have to your company and your products, right? So all of these things are really great information to think through, because they will then, you'll then start getting quite quickly what barriers there are to overcome, what opportunities there are to leverage with this specific audience, and then how you can target your social media campaign to them in the best way possible that they would want to engage with you. Final point in this section, just a quick thing about content. It's obvious that constantly doing ad hoc, like single campaigns is not optimal. And unfortunately, that's kind of what happens more often than not. There's this congress and you work for that and you get that out. Then there's this presentation by senior management, so you work for that and you do a campaign on that. Then there's a satellite symposium, right? It's one defined event after the other, with no link between them, really. No follow through, no consistency, no evergreen aspect of this thing. So we need to be ideally coming up with evergreen content that you're producing on an ongoing basis. So you develop it once, and then you can leverage it multiple times throughout the year when opportunities arise. But when you're actually developing the content, there's this kind of three-axis model that I find quite helpful. So obviously, there's what you want to say, and I think hopefully everyone watching this has seen the models where it's like what you should be developing is in between what you want to say and the audience's interests. So what are the audience's interests? What do they want? What are their pain points? Where can you add value? And that's the key question. It's not what you want to say, and it's not necessarily what they want to hear, right? They might just want to see cat pictures. What do you have to say or offer that your audiences would value or care about, and develop that? But then there's a third axis to this, which is what exists already, right? Quite often, and I've been guilty of this myself, we create content without looking to see what's out there already. Are we creating an infographic when there are 5,000 equally good infographics out there already, right? So the question is, how are you differentiated? Where can you offer true, unique value? And lastly, is there a topic or an area where stakeholders a credible unmet content need? All of these are super important and so often left out when you're developing a social media campaign. So if you can answer these three questions in the content scoping stage, you'll be so much better off and set for success going forwards. So thank you. So that was the presentation. So just to summarize, we need to stop running around delivering lots of stuff with minimal questionable value to people. And I think this is the main thing. This is the headless chicken mode that we're in. Quite often we're under pressure to deliver outputs, and outcomes is actually what we need to start thinking of, because that's where we'll be able to show meaningful value to the business and to our audiences. We need to be crystal clear on the why of every single plan, campaign, and asset. And that why should not just be because I want to be visible, or I just want to, we're leaders in this space, so we just should be present. That's not a really good why. Like, what is it that we can do that would add meaningful value to a very specific audience? How can we be truly audience-centric? How can we really get into what they need, what they want? How can we add value, address pain points? If we can get there, social media campaigns will instantly succeed much, much better than they have before. Focusing on value, not vanity metrics. I know it's so tempting to just have clicks, likes, shares as our top KPIs for any social media campaign. But remember, that's at the bottom end of the arrow that I showed earlier. It feels good, but ultimately provides no value, and you're going to be in trouble with those metrics if senior management ever comes and questions what you're doing. And then, with all of that, get ready for the inevitable pharma marketing paradigm shift, where we have to do everything very cost effectively, where we need to fully factor in the patient in everything that we're doing. It's coming. We have all the tools. We have all the experience as communicators and social media marketers to do this. I will end this presentation just saying, I know you can do it. This is an opportunity for us to lead a major consideration within the marketing mix and really show our value to our business colleagues. So now's the time. And I wish you all the best in getting that to that point. So thank you. I hope you have a good rest of the day, and hopefully we will cross paths again sometime before too long. Goodbye.